Hey guys, what is up? I hope everybody's doing well out there. I am doing great. Welcome into my Final Fantasy VII Crisis Core reunion video where I'm going to be reviewing Final Fantasy VII Crisis Core and giving my thoughts on the game. So Final Fantasy VII Crisis Core was originally a PlayStation Portable game that came out a few years back, and then they remade it on HD consoles now, and they also released it on PC as well. Final Fantasy VII Crisis Core Reunion, this HD remake of the game, changes a few things in the gameplay like the user interface and a few gameplay parts of the game, and then it also remasters the music and it makes the graphics of the game HD and vastly improved over the original PSP version of the game. So what is Final Fantasy VII Crisis Core Reunion all about? This game is a prequel game to Final Fantasy VII where you play as the character Zack, who we know from Final Fantasy VII. It basically goes over Zack's story before the beginning of FF7. So now that we know a little bit about what the world and story of Final Fantasy VII Crisis Core is all about, let's start talking about what the gameplay of the game is like. First off, Final Fantasy VII Crisis Core is not a turn-based RPG like the original Final Fantasy VII. Instead, this game has different combat. It has action RPG combat. So when you go into battles play out like an action game. Basically, the game progresses in a chapter-like system, so you'll go through all the chapters of the game, and then when you get to the end of the game, you obviously beat it. So in Final Fantasy VII Crisis Core Reunion, you'll be going to different areas in the game, and battles in the game are randomly encountered. You'll be exploring along a path, and then after you take a few steps, you get into a battle and enemies appear and a fight starts. Now, as I mentioned earlier, battles are action RPG battles, so they play like an action game. In combat, the main character, Zack, can slash enemies with his sword, he can use magic spells from the materia he has equipped, or he can use items. In battle, you can also do a dodge roll with Zack, the main character, to dodge enemy attacks. The controls in Final Fantasy VII Crisis Core are fortunately very good, and the battle controls are very smooth. The battles have a ton of different abilities and attacks you can do, and that's one of the funnest parts of FF7 Crisis Core Reunion is all the different abilities and attacks you get in battle. Now, one gameplay mechanic we really need to talk about in battles is the DMW system. The best way I can describe it is that it's like a slot machine at a casino. You have three pictures that appear, they start spinning, and then after a while they stop, and whatever it lands on, you can get a random effect to happen. For example, the wheel can stop spinning, and then all of a sudden you get a limit break attack for Zack where he does a big limit break attack. It does a ton of damage to all the enemies and has a really cool animation. Alternatively, you can also get a boost in battle that helps you out. So the DMW might stop spinning and then all of a sudden you get an effect where for like 30 seconds all of your spells cost 0 MP. And so you can keep spamming spells and they won't use any MP until the effect runs out. The DMW is a pretty interesting system and it adds a lot more variety to the battles. Now, once you defeat enemies in battle, you'll get EXP. Get enough EXP and then Zack, the main character, will level up. Upon leveling, Zack will get more powerful and his stats will increase. In terms of character customization in Final Fantasy VII Crisis Core, the materia system returns from the original Final Fantasy VII. You can equip materia onto Zack, the main character, and you can give him different abilities. Depending on what materia he equips will change the abilities that he can use in battle. Also, from winning battles, you can level up materia and the abilities on the materia will get more powerful as a result. Materia in the game can be found from doing optional side missions, it can be bought at stores, or you can get them from defeating enemies as well. Now, aside from the main story, the player can also choose to do optional side missions in the game too. And basically, you can go to a save point, and from there you can access the side missions that you can do in the game. And most of them give really good rewards, and if you do them, you can make your character a lot more powerful. Now that we talked about what the game plays like, I want to kind of get more into the story of Final Fantasy VII Crisis Core. So the story of Final Fantasy VII Crisis Core, as I mentioned, it's a prequel to Final Fantasy VII that has you playing the role of the main character of this game, Zack. And we learn more about Zack's backstory from Final Fantasy VII, and we see the events that led up to the story in Final Fantasy VII and how many of the characters in that game turned out the way they are. And some of the best moments are like when you see the Nibelheim scenes that led to Sephiroth being the way he is in Final Fantasy VII, and being able to see that in this game with HD graphics, voice acting, and being able to see those story scenes and everything that led up to the events in Final Fantasy VII. They added brand new characters to the world of Final Fantasy VII in this game, and some of the new characters are Angeal, who is like a mentor to the main character Zack and helps guide him. And then there's another character named Genesis, who I would say is not that good of a character. And he's mainly this guy who shows up, he's always like reciting poetry, and he basically kind of does the same thing every single scene. And he's very one-dimensional and very much like a one-note, one-dimensional character who's always doing the same thing over and over. Zack, the main character, meanwhile, is pretty likable, but he's also kind of one-dimensional as well. He's very much a generic good guy. He reminds me kind of like the main character of an anime. He's super optimistic, he's super upbeat, he's always excited to do stuff, but he's pretty much that the whole entire way throughout the game. And that's the problem with a lot of the characters in the game, is that they act the same way throughout the entire game's story, and they don't really change. Overall, the characters in Final Fantasy VII Crisis Core Reunion are hit and miss. Some of them are really good, like the main character Zack and Angeal. Angeal's a really great character as well. But then other ones like Genesis are not so good. So it really depends. The story is overall decent. It's pretty good for the most part, but it's very hit and miss. There's definitely some weak points in the story and the writing of Final Fantasy VII Crisis Core Reunion. Now, the music in Final Fantasy VII Crisis Core Reunion is really good, especially the battle and the boss themes. They are awesome. If you're really into heavy metal music or rock music, you'll really like the battle themes a lot in this game. Overall, the soundtrack is definitely one of the strongest points of the game. Now, overall, what are some of the flaws of Final Fantasy VII Crisis Core in terms of the gameplay and the game overall? So first off, the first flaw I would say with the game is the area designs. Now, in RPG games, you go to like dungeons and you fight enemies there, right? And then you got like cool puzzles to solve and a lot of items to find. And I feel like Final Fantasy VII Crisis Core is really lacking in that regard. A lot of the areas are very straightforward, linear paths. There's very few puzzles, and the area designs aren't as good as other RPGs out there. Another flaw I would say with the game is with the game's combat system. While there's a lot of really cool abilities and attacks you get, there aren't many combos that you can do, and especially there's really no aerial combos that you can do in the game. In some other action games and action RPG games, you can hit an enemy up into the air, keep hitting them up there. You can do really long combo moves where you string together like 3, 4, or 5 different attack moves all into one combo, and there really isn't that kind of combo system in Crisis Core's combat. Also, one of the changes they introduced in the Reunion HD remake of the game is that now enemies, when they do their super powerful attacks, have a gauge, and if you can do enough damage to them, you can deplete the gauge and prevent them from doing their big attack. But personally, I would have preferred if they added a way to just flat out dodge the attack, because really all this gameplay system does is it's just a stat check. You know, can you do enough damage within the time limit to break the attack and prevent them from doing it? It doesn't really add skill. It's just a check to see if you're leveled enough to be able to damage him enough to stop the attack. And then, as I mentioned, the game also has some story flaws as well. A lot of the characters are very one-dimensional. They act the same way throughout the whole game. Genesis is really not that good of a character either. I didn't like Genesis too much either. But some of the other new characters, like Angeal, were pretty good in the game. But overall, the story I would probably say is the weakest aspect of Crisis Core. But it's still a pretty decent story, just not anything like great or amazing. But overall, the game is a lot of fun. I really enjoyed it. I played through it multiple times on the PSP. I had a lot of fun replaying this HD remake and the Reunion version. And overall, I recommend buying this at full price. It's a very fun game. It's good, mindless action, hacking slash gameplay. It's got a great soundtrack. The story is decent. And if you're an FF7 fan, you'll like seeing the build up to a lot of the events in the FF7 story. Overall, I want to say a big thank you to everybody for watching the video. I really greatly appreciate it. Make sure to subscribe to the YouTube channel and also follow me on Twitch. Thank you all so much. Everyone have a great day, and I will catch you all in the next video. Thank you all so much.